Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam udirayet nashta prayeshva bhadreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke Bhaktir bhavati naistiki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya cha Nanda Gopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Nama Govindaya Namo Nama. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji and Mataji. Welcome you all to our Srimad-Bhagavatam study sessions. So in the last session we covered first canto, chapter number 5, and that was titled Naradji's instruction to Vyasadeji about Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. So just to recap and get some context for today's session. So Vyasadeji, who had written all the Puranas and Itihas, he was still feeling despondent. And then Naradji appeared on that at Vyasadeji's ashram. And then Vyasadeji got up and Vyasadeji welcomed Naradji. And then Naradji then asked Vyasadeji that how are you feeling? Do you think, are you satisfied with the work that you have done? He appreciated all the work, literally work that Vyasadeji had done. But Naradji knew why Vyasadeji was dissatisfied. And then he tells him that how you have described the four dharmas. Yeah. So he tells him that yatha, as you have described the four dharmas, the four objectives of performing these activities, because that similar way you haven't described the na tatha vasudevasya mahimahi anuvarnita. Yeah. So how you have described the four dharma, janm, as they say, dharma, arth, kam and moksha, you haven't described similarly the glories of Bhagavan Vasudeva. And then he actually even goes on to chastise him. He calls him jugupsitam vyatikrama, that what you have done is very abominable, because this will promote karma kand activities, because it will be very difficult for people, because they don't want to listen, or they don't want to adhere to the principles. They will only pick up the things that suits them, which is the sense enjoyment. So they will misinterpret the Vedas. So he chastises him, and then finally he concludes and he tells him that please, you go and write the glories of Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he tells him, Prakhyahi dukkher muhu ardita atmana, go and describe the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because sanklesh nirvanam na anyatha, there is no other solution to end the miseries of the Vidam who are intelligent, or who are looking for the opportunity to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For them also the only solution is to glorify the Supreme Lord. And for the people who don't understand the importance of serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for their benefit also, you should go and propagate prakhyahi, which means propagate the glories of Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, and then Naradji goes on to describe his own life, his own pastime when he was young. In his last life, he describes to him that how in his previous life he was son of a maid servant. Yeah. And then he got an opportunity to get the association of the Vedantis, and by serving them, and once by their own permission, he honored the remnants of the food that was accepted by them. With their permission, he accepted that. And then they also instructed him about the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And because of that, Naradji then himself says that, that is the only solution. And then he goes on to concludes that evam nirnam, he says that of all the living entities, evam nirnam kriya yoga, yeah, sarve samsriti hetava. So all the kriya yoga, all the activities that living entities are performing, they are sansriti hetava. Samsriti word has come from samsar, Prabhuji Mataji. And samsar does not mean global, this globe. Sansar means janma, mrityu, jara, vyadhi. Birth, death, old age and disease. That's what is called samsar. And it also means iha samsrati, who rotates, who transmigrates. So that is the samsar. So what Naradji is saying is that evam nirnam, therefore, the Kriya Yoga, all the yogas that they are performing, Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, Hatha Yoga, all the yogas except Bhakti yogas that they are performing, Naradji concludes that that is actually ultimately become the reason for their coming back into this world. But then Naradji tells him, ta eva atma vinashaya. Those same activities could cut the tree of this samsriti. Ta eva atma vinashaya kalpante kalpita pare. Yeah. So very important. So what he's saying is that the same activities that we are performing, if we perform the same activities, no change, but for the pleasure of Supreme Personality of Godhead. We just have to channel them in the Supreme Personality. Same activities. And he gives an analogy. For example, if somebody gets unwell by eating some milk product, then to cure that disease, the doctor prescribes another product which is made from milk, like curd. So they prescribe you take curd and then you mix something into the curd and then that becomes the medicine also. So same action, you don't have to change. Bhagavan Kapil Dev, when he's speaking to Mata Devuti, he's saying the same thing. Sa eva sadhu shukrata moksha dwaram apavata. Sa eva. You don't have to change. You just have to channel those activities, Prabhuji Mataji, unto the lotus feet of Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that's what he concludes. Whereas all these activities, all these actions that we are performing, they are actually become the reason for our binding. Shripad Adi Shankaracharya, he also concludes that he says that Shariram Surupam Navinam Kalatram, yeah, Dhanameru Tulyam, Yashas Charu Chittam, Hare Rangri Padmam, Manaschana Lagnam, Tatakim, 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 Tatakim. Yeah. So what he's saying is that, okay, by performing all these Karam Kand activities, what can you do? You can get a nice body, Shariram Surupam. You get a nice, beautiful body. Okay. Then what else will you get? Navinam Kalatram, you will get a beautiful life partner, husband or wife. You have a beautiful body, you get a beautiful life partner. Dhanameru Tulyam, Dhan, you get opulences equivalent to the height of Sumeru Parvat. You got that. Yashas Charu Chittam, you are glorified everywhere. In all the directions, your glories are spread. But then, Hare Rangri Padmam Manaschanalam. But if you haven't developed the love or attraction to the lotus feet of Supreme Personality of Godhead, then Shripad Adi Shankaracharya says, Tatah kim, Tatah kim, Tatah kim, Tatah kim. 4 times he is saying, what have you done? What have you done? What have you done? What have... That means that these are no achievement. There is no comparison of these achievements. Right? So that is why Naradji is chastising Vyasji, and he tells him that you have done very good research. Your inquiries, jigyasita adhitam. So you made right inquiries. You have right understanding, but please go and glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yeah, please spread His glory. Yeah. So I hope we are all on the same page. So that's where it concludes. Now we go on to the 6th chapter. In today's chapter, it is titled Further Conversation Between Naradji and Vyasadeji. But in today's chapter, Prabhuji Mataji, now Vyasadeji further wants to know about the past life of Naradji. He wants to know more about his spiritual master. He has more inquiries. Now Naradji has described, yeah. So he wants to have more inquiries. So we will discuss that, how that conversation goes, and what can we learn from that conversation. Let's do Mangalacharan. Let's take the blessings of Guru Parampara and Guru Maharaj, and then we will discuss that further. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padkamlam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitantam Sajivam Savadetam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Shri Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Shri Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarobhyascha Kripa Sindhu Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Nama Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Bhutermahadbhiryayima puro vibho nirmayashete yadmusha purusha bhunte gunashodashatmakam solank srashta bhagavan vachamsi me Shri Krishna Sharanam Sharanaagatam Katha Amritam Satat Pibatam Bhakti Vedanta Marga Panthanam Sarvalok Rishi Deva Janma Prasannam Sarvalok Rishi Deva Janma Prasannam. Hare Krishna. So let me share my screen, Prabhuji Mataji. So, conversation between Naradji and Vyasadeji. Now, as I was saying, Naradji instructed Vyasadeji to write about Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, to describe the glories of Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, Vyasadeji had questions from. So, in today's chapter, there are 3 questions that are asked by Vyasadeji. So, it is not out of ordinary for a disciple to ask question about their spiritual master. Sometimes disciples ask some personal questions also about how do you know about your previous life. In our own parampara, Srila Prabhupada, he was happy to share the activities from his own life. He even admitted to his disciples, when he was talking, he told them that he did not like his wife. He even thought of marrying second time, but then very important point that I want to highlight here, Prabhuji Mataji, you will find a lot of incidences even in this where Srimad-Bhagavatam is being spoken. Here in this assembly, when Shukdev Goswami is speaking Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam to Parikshit Maharaj, in that assembly, there are so many exalted personalities sitting there. Vishwamitraji is there, Maharishi Vasishtha is there, Naradji himself is sitting there, Vyasadeji is sitting there. All these great personalities are sitting there. So the point is, we ask the questions to learn and to apply in our life. When Srila Prabhupada mentioned to his father that he wanted to have a second marriage, then his father told him, His Grace Gaur Mohan Day, that maybe this is for your benefit. This will help you in your spiritual journey. And Prabhupada took that as a great advice, and that's what he says, in his memoirs, that it actually acted in a positive way for him, because then he dedicated himself completely onto the Krishna consciousness. So he did not have so much attachment from the very early stages. But in saying that, very important point, Srila Prabhupada never shunned away from his responsibilities. He performed his responsibilities as a devoted husband, as a devoted householder. He made sure they are being looked after. Till the last point, till the last moment, he made sure his children, they got properly married. His wife is looked after. So he made all the arrangement. Yeah. So, but sometimes these events happen in our life, and they happen for a reason. So we see, the moment we start seeing Krishna's hand in everything around us, Prabhuji Mataji, then the life becomes easy. It is, somebody said that if something happens which is not to your liking, then we say it is Hari Ichha. It is Krishna's desire. And if something happens which is to your liking, then we say it is Hari Kripa. So it is mercy of Krishna. So here Naradji, Vyasadeji is asking personal questions from Naradji, that who were you in your previous life? What did you do in your previous life? How have you got this body? Yeah. So after those Vedantis, in the last chapter, we only heard that Naradji took remnant of the food left by them, and then they instructed him about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and then Naradji passed the same instruction to Vyasadeji. But now Vyasadeji is more inquisitive. Now he's asking more questions from him. He's asking, what did you exactly do after those Vedantis left? How did you got this body? Because that was in the previous lifetime. How did you got that body? And most importantly, the third question that he asked is that this pastime that you have spoken to me, it happened in the previous kalpa. Because what did he say? Naradji, when he told Vyasadeji about his birth, so 1:5:23. Yeah? So that's what he's saying. Aham purati tabhave abhavam mune dasyastu kasyas chanvedavadina. Yeah. So he says aham purati tabhave. So he's talking about the previous kalp. Previous kalp is trillion years back, 4.3 trillion years back. That's when it happened. So he's asking now, what you have told me is happened in the previous kalpa, which means after 4.3 million is Brahmaji's day, and then another 4.3 million is his night. So it happened during his day, Brahmaji's day. So how do you remember? Yeah? So these were the three questions that he asked. So now he's saying, in the previous kalp, I was a Dasi Putra. I was son of a maid servant, and there were rishis who were staying in that ashram. So she was doing service there, and Naradji, he was a young boy. He was playing around in that ashram, and as unknowingly he served them. He was also doing cleaning services, and as you can see, then Naradji got blessed from them. Yeah. So then he asked, Vyasadeji asked first question. So first question that Vyasadeji is asking from Naradji is that, what did you do after the departure of the great sages who had instructed you in scientific transcendental knowledge before the beginning of your present birth? Now he's Naradji, he's Narada. But what did you do from now, going back? Yeah, from then until now, you got your present birth. So that's one question. Remember these questions, please. Very important. Then he's asking the second question, how did you pass your life after initiation? So all of this that Naradji has spoken to Vyasadeji in the previous chapter, he was initiated, Prabhuji Mataji, he got initiated. And after that, he's spoken, he has only shared about spreading the glories, but now we will know in more detail how Naradji passed his life after initiation. And it can be a great lesson for us also, who are aspiring for initiation or who are already initiated. We can apply a lot of things in our life. And how did you attain this body? Having put your old one in due course. Then he also says that Prak Kalpa Vishyam Etam Smritim Te Muni Sattama. He says, O Muni, O topmost of the Munis, what you are telling me is happened in the previous Kalpa. Yeah, Prak Kalpa. So, and at the time he says, Nahi Esha Vyavadhat Kala. There is nothing that is not get destroyed by the time. Yeah, Esh Sarva Nirakriti. That time it destroys everything. It deforms everything, Nirakriti. But how is it that this memory is still fresh in your mind? Yeah, right? It is not undisturbed by the time. So these were the three questions, Prabhuji Mataji, that were asked by Vyasadevji from Naradji. Yeah? So please remember these questions, and through the course of this chapter, we will answer these questions, and there is a lot of learning for us through this pastime. So now Naradji tells Vyasadevji that my mother, who was a maid servant, so he's saying she was serving them, and she says that she was sa aswatantra. Sa aswatantra na kalpasid yogakshemam mamechati. Yeah, ishasya hi vashe loko yosha daru mayyatha. So he's saying, me and my mother, we were the only two person in the family. And my mother was very much attached to me, and I was also very much attached to my mother. And she was aswatantra. She was not independent. So Naradji is saying in his previous life that my mother, she was not independent. She was dependent because she was a maid servant. Yeah, na kalpasi. She was not able to look after me so nicely. Yeah, yoga kshemam mamechati. Even though she was always thinking of my welfare, yeah, but she was not independent. She was dependent because she was a maid servant, and whatever she was getting by performing these services at others' houses, from that she was able to look after me. She was able to feed me with that only. But in the same line, Naradji also acknowledges. He says that Ishasya hi vashe loko yosha daru mayyat. So there is no feeling of regret. Yeah, very important point. So he's saying that like this whole world is controlled under the control of Supreme Personality of Godhead. Ishasya hi vashe loko. Everything is under the control of Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he gives an analogy how yosha daru mayyat. Like a wooden doll. Like a wooden doll, everything is under the control of Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even though my mother wanted to do so much good for me, but she was unable to do that because she was dependent on others. And then he says that one day my mother went into the jungle, into the forest in the dark, and she was going in the dark to milk a cow. As she went in the jungle to milk the cow, she passed by a snake. And there was a snake in the forest. And as she was passing by mistake, she stepped on the snake. And then the snake bit my mother. And the snake bit my mother. And then he says, as the snake bit my mother could not survive and she passed away. She left her body, and Naradji was only 5 years old at that point of time. And then Naradji says that when that thing happened, then he says, Tada tad aham. Tada tad aham ishasya. Yeah. So he says, like he said earlier on, that everything is controlled by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then he says, Tada, then, tad aham. I understood that once again, ishasya, as something which is ordained by Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yeah, and that Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhaktanam, yeah, sham abhipsita. who is merciful to fulfill the desire of his devotees. So he says, when that happened, then I thought it is Supreme Personality of God. Yeah. And he says, Anugraham Manyamana. I thought of that as a mercy of Supreme Personality of Godhead, or as something which is ordained by Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then he says, then he started walking towards the north side. Pratishtham Disham Uttara. Yeah. So the snake bit his mother. She was going to milk a cow, and then she died. And Naradji took it as a mercy of the God, because he's already admitted everything is under the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then he says, I started walking towards the north side. Without knowing anything which he is going, Naradji, he left. As you can see, a small boy, 5-year-old, and he's already been initiated. Very important. He's already got Guru Ashraya. He's already been instructed in the spiritual transcendental science of Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Naradji, he started walking towards the north side. And he says, as he was walking, he went through various forests. Yeah. Vana upvanyanicha. He passed through Nagar, various towns, opulent towns. He passed through Gram, many villages, towns, villages, Upwan, the forest, the natural forest, yeah, small gardens. And not just that, Prabhuji Mata, he also passed through many opulent cities. And he saw the cities decorated so nicely. There were gold mines, there were jewels, there were diamonds. So he passed through. He was just walking, and he didn't know where he was going. He was just going towards the north side, and he passed through all those cities. On the way, he saw Jalashaya. He saw many reservoirs of water. He saw so much opulence, which is said that even the demigods, the denizens of the heaven, even they also want to get those kind of opulences. He went through all of that. And then at some point, he says he also went through some of the forest. Ghoram, very dangerous, very scary. Pra Bhayankaram, very dangerous, very scary forest. He passed through them. He went through the playground. The playground he described a playground of Vyal. Vyal as in snakes. Uluk, owls, in the night as the owls, keep flying. Yeah. And then Vyal, snakes, and jackals, So visualize, imagine a 5-year-old boy walking through the various forests, and there are these wild animals. Yeah? And Prabhupada says that this is what a Privarajkacharya's duty is to. A Privarajkacharya or a mendicant, they there are various stages. So once when you take sannyas, initially what used to happen is you go and then you live outside the town. Initially, you will get some food supplied from the house. That is the first stage. The house will send you some food items. Right? After slowly, you develop more austerity. Then you go and start begging. Then the food supply from home stops coming. Then you go and beg yourself. And as you are begging yourself, then you realize that there is no need to rely on one place. You can go and there are various places where you can get some enough food stuff just to maintain your body. And the next stage is then you realize, okay, if I'm begging one place, another place, then you say, why am I only staying at one place? Then you start traveling and preaching the glories of Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then you become a Parivrajkacharya. Then you are going around, Parivraj. You are roaming around the globe, and but Naradji from the very early age, that is, he's obeying the rules of a Privrajkacharya. He did not plan to stay at one place. Anybody could have pity on him. Oh, such a young child. Anybody could have given him a shelter. And very important, when he's passing through opulent cities also. And that's our life also, Prabhuji Mataji. Think of it. How we plan, or we want to come to Australia. We come to opulent country. We thought India wasn't that better country. We've come here. Now here also we're getting these opulences. But if we get entangled into these opulences, then that's it. So a true Rajkacharya, a true devotee doesn't get attached to these opulences. They just pass through these, right? You know, when Vidurji came to after his pilgrimage, Vidurji comes back and he goes to see Yudhishthira Maharaj. When he goes to see Yudhishthira Maharaj praises Vidurji's austerities, that he went, and he even calls him Tirthi Kurvanti Tirthani. He says, you are a pilgrimage personified. Wherever you go, that place becomes place of pilgrimage. But then Vidurji is also appreciating Yudhishthira Maharaj. And our acharyas say that, you know, on one side, Vidurji, who went to the forest and he performed those austerities. But even higher than that, Yudhishthira Maharaj, who is living in the palaces, but even while living in the palaces, he is following the regulatory principles. So he is even higher than because he's in the Grahastha ashram, but he is even higher than that place, because despite having these opulences, he is not immersed into enjoying those opulences. Yeah, so very important point. During our life also, Prabhuji Mataji, we pass through various these things and we get hung up. We say, this is a beautiful place, maybe we stay here. Like we plan to stay in Australia forever, right? Some of you have built your houses and this thing, and we say, oh, this is my permanent place, I'm a permanent resident. But we have to learn a lot from Naraji's pastime. Yeah? So Naraji is saying he is passing through all those places, forest, towns, opulent places, and walking. And then he says, after walking through these forests, then he gets tired. Parishrante indriya atmaha. Yeah? So he got tired, his senses got tired, like working senses, walking, hand, etc. Parishrante indriya. Yeah. Trit parito bubhukshita. He was feeling thirsty. Bubhukshita. He was also feeling a little bit of hunger. Then what did he do? He says, as he was going there, then he found a pond. He found a reservoir of water. Yeah. So he says, Parishrante indriyaham trit parito bubhukshita snatva pitva hride nadya upasprashto gatashram. Yeah. So he came across a reservoir of water, and there Naraji, he said, because he was thirsty and he was hungry, he just drank some water. Snatva pitva hride nadya. Snatva as in he took a bath, pitva as in he drank, and Hriday as in the middle of that reservoir, in the heart of that reservoir. Hriday Nadya. Yeah. So he took a dip, he took a bath in that, he drank water, and by drinking that water, he says his hunger and thirst went away. And then he says, Upas Prasto Gatashram. Just by touching that water, his shram, all his fatigue went away. Yeah. We have discussed many past times how in our parampara, those acharyas who were living in Vrindavan, Prabhuji Mataji, they used to survive only on drinking water from Yamuna. A lot of them, yeah, they will just take this much water and drink from Yamunaji, and that will be it. One, I think I mentioned to you, they will just also take some mud and then eat that mud from Yamuna, Shri Yamunaji, and then they will survive. So we cannot imitate that, but the point is, it is up to us how we want to minimize our needs, bodily needs, and we can do that, Prabhuji Mataji, by following the devotional process. Yeah, very nicely Naradji tells tells Vyasadeji in the future shloka. So he tells him that Yamadi Yoga Pathai. Yeah, Kam Lobh Hato Muhu. Yeah, Yam Adi Yog Pathai. Yam and Niyam. So so sometimes we say we restrict our senses. We say no, something is in front of you, but you don't have to take this. Yam. We don't. We just control. Yeah. And mentally we're trying to control that. Yeah. And these various path, these various marks, Kam Lobh Hato Muhu. Yeah. To suppress the calm and the low, Yeah, to suppress these propensities, Prabhuji Mataji, these various yoga path. Yeah, Naradji is saying, na shamyati. It cannot subside, it cannot destroy all these propensities. Then what can do that? He says, Mukund sevaya yatvat tatha atma adha na shamyati. How by serving Lord Mukund, by serving Lord Shri Krishna, how these propensities can be suppressed automatically. But if you try to suppress them through mental control, if you say I can control my mind and through mind I can suppress my senses, no, Prabhuji Mataji, it doesn't work like that, because sooner or later it will come out. The moment there is an opportunity, then we will just do it. But the point is, as Srila Prabhupada says, this is about changing the consciousness. Yeah, so the whole process is to change the consciousness, yeah, rather than physically suppressing the senses. So that's what happened. Naradji, he just drank the water and all his thirst and his fatigue and hunger just went away. And then Naradji is telling Vyasadeji that Tasmin nirmanuja aranye, yeah, piplo upastha ashrita. In that forest, nirmanuj, where there was no other living entity, no other human being, he says, Tasmin nirmanuj aranye, piplo upastha ashrita. People, there is a people tree. Yeah. So he says, on the trunk of that people tree, I rested, ashrita. And then what did he do? He says, Atmanam Atmastham. Yeah. Chintayam Yathashrutam Achintayam. Very important. Yeah. Very important. Let me just. Yeah. So this is how now Naradji Piplo Upastha. So he's sitting on the against a trunk, ashrita. He took shelter under a banyan tree. So he's sitting there and he says, what did he do? Then Atmana is intelligence. Atmanam is supreme personality of Godhead. Atmastham, who is inside. Yeah. Yeah. Ishvara Sarva Bhutana Hrideshe Arjun Tishtati. Lord Krishna is saying in Bhagavad Gita. So that's what Naradji is saying, that he, Atmana, he used his intelligence to focus on Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is inside everyone, Atmastham. And how did he do that? He says, Yatha Shrutam Achinte. As he had heard from those Vedantis, similarly, as per their instruction. So another important lesson, Prabhuji Mataji, we can learn from this. So like I said earlier also, these pastimes, we are not discussing them for academic purpose. We are discussing them to learn something, to imply in our life, right? So these are the proven examples. So you don't need to reinvent the wheel. We just accept them as it is. My Guru Maharaj says, this is like a cooked, sweet rice. We just have to honor it. It's all there for us. Yeah. So Naradji, he started meditating, and he started meditating on that Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is Atmastham, who is inside everyone. And Naradji says, as he started meditating, then what happened? Then he says, Dhyayata. As he started thinking of that Supreme Personality of Godhead, he says, Dhyayata Charana Ambhojam. Yeah, that lotus feet. Yeah, as he was meditating on the lotus feet of that Supreme Personality of Godhead, Charana Ambhojam. Then what happened? He says, Utkantho. His heart, his throat got choked. Yeah, Utkanthaya Ashru Kalakshasya. Yeah, his throat got choked and the tears started flowing from his eyes as he started meditating on the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yeah, and as he was doing that, then suddenly, as the tears were flowing, he got a glimpse of Supreme Personality of Godhead, and then he says, suddenly that glimpse went away. Now he could not see the Supreme Personality of Godhead anymore, and he got worried now. And he started thinking, how can I see that Lord again? How can I see him again? And as he was agitated, he was looking around. And then Naradji says, then he tried to meditate again. He tried to concentrate again. But he could not get the vision, the same vision that he could see earlier on, that he could see that form of Supreme Lord inside his heart. And as he was doing, he was looking around, then Naradji tells Vyasadeji, then there was a sound. Then Supreme Personality of Godhead spoke. And Supreme Personality of Godhead spoke and told him that in this life, yeah, he says, Hanta Asmin Janmani. Yeah, Asmin Janmani. Hanta as in you cannot see now. Asmin Janmani, in this lifetime. Hanta Asmin Janmani Mam Drishtum Arhati. In this lifetime, you cannot get my darshan again. Yeah. And then he says, Avi Pakwa Kashayana Durdarsho Aham Ku Yogina. Avi Pakwa Kashayana. So first he tells him that you cannot see me in this lifetime again. Yeah, that vision you cannot get. And then he also says that Avi Pakwa Kashayana. People who are not fully matured in their devotional service, who still have some material desires. Now, please don't take this instruction as that Lord is telling Narad that Narad, or in that lifetime, that Narad, you still have material attachments. It doesn't apply to Naradji, it applies to us. So this is Supreme Lord speaking himself directly to Naradji, even though he is telling him, but through him, this is an instruction for others, Prabhuji Mataji. Supreme Lord very clearly declared, Avi Pakwa Kashayana. Because we are not mature in our devotional service, because we still have material desires in our heart. So Krishna says, Durdarsho Aham. I am very difficult to be seen, yeah, by Kuyogina, who are Kuyogi, not Suyogi. Yeah, you know how Brahmaji very nicely prays. I think I mentioned this example earlier also. Once few disciples, few people asked Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada, can we see Lord Krishna? Can we see Krishna? Prabhupada said, yes, you can see Krishna. But before that, first you have to become human being. And they were like, what? We are human beings. Prabhupada said, no. First, you have to follow the 4 regulative principles. You have to chant the holy name. By following the regulative principles, by chanting the holy names, your existence will be purified. And when you are purified, then you will be given the eyes of love, eyes of bhakti. You know how Brahmaji says, Premanjana churita bhakti vilochanena santa sadev hridayeshu vilokayanti yam sham sundaramachintaya guna swarupam govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. Premanjana churita bhakti vilochanena. Prem ka anjan in your eyes, you know how what they apply in the eyes, it's called kajal or mascara. So he says, in your eyes you have to apply that bhakti prem, the loving devotional service in your eyes. Churita bhakti vilochanena, with the devotional eyes. Then with those eyes, santah sadev hridayeshu vilokayanti. The sant, all the devotees, the topmost devotees, they can always get the darshan of Supreme Lord in their hearts. Sadev, this is Brahmaji speaking. And what they see, Yam Sham Sundaram Achintaya. That Sham Sundar, that Supreme Personality of Godhead who is so beautiful, yeah, Achintaya, which we can't even think of. He is so beautiful. Yeah, they can see that. Yeah. So that's what now Supreme Personality of Godhead is saying, that Durdarsho Aham Ku Yogina. But then also in the next verse, then Supreme Personality of Godhead, the same sound also tells Naradji that, but matir mai nibadheyam na vipadyet karhichit. Yeah. Praja sarga nirodhepi. Yeah. So he tells him that matir mai nibadheyam. Your intelligence, your mind, which is now connected with me, oh my dear child, it will never be broken. Na vipadyet karhichit. So that connection, that fixation, now that your intelligence is fixed on me, please don't worry. Now your intelligence fixed on me, it will stay like that. It will not be broken. Na vipadet kar hichid, it will never be broken. Yeah. But at the same time, he says that your smritischa mad anugraha. Yeah, that will never be broken. But this remembrance, you will have this remembrance of this vision forever. Yeah, forever means Lord also says praja sargo nirodhepi. Sarg is creation and nirod is annihilation. So after every millennium, there is a creation and there is annihilation. There is a Mahapralaya, there is Pralaya. So here Naradji, as a child, he was promised by Supreme Lord that this remembrance will stay with you forever. So this answers Vyasadeviji's third question. Please remember these questions. And these are the intelligent queries, Prabhuji Mataji, that we have to make to our spiritual master or to whoever we speak. See, through this process, now spiritual master is teaching. Yeah. And I made a point that in that same assembly where Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is being spoken, do you know, before he became a Dasi Putra, what was Naradji's birth? So in the previous Kalp, Naradji, he was a Gandharva. Let me tell you this pastime. It is covered in 7th canto, 15th chapter. When we go to 7th canto, we'll discuss this pastime. And Naradji narrates this pastime to Maharaj Yudhishthira, when Maharaj Yudhishthira is asking him the duties of a grasta. So in that, so in the previous birth of Naradji, in this birth he is Naradji. In the previous birth he was Dasi Putra. Before he became a Dasi Putra, he was a Gandharva, and his name was Upabrahana. Yeah, his name was Upabrahana. He was a Gandharva. And once what happened, he was a, Gandharva, they are very beautiful and they have very nice sound. People who sing nicely, we tell them you are singing like a Gandharva. Yeah? So they are very good looking and they have very nice sound. So Naradji, in that age, he was a Gandharva, and once he was invited by all the demigods. So there was a beautiful function happening in the Indravati, and Naradji, he was a Gandharva, Upabrahana, he was invited in that function, and he had so many girlfriends. He was so handsome in that in that life. So he had so many girlfriends. He went to the assembly with all of his girlfriends, surrounded by all these women. And there in that assembly, all the Prajapatis were also there. So the Prajapatis, Prabhuji Mataji, they are Brahmaji's mind-born sons, who are responsible for creating the progeny. Marich Rishi, Angira Rishi, Pulast Rishi, Pulah Rishi, yeah, Bhrigu Rishi, Vasist Rishi, Daksh Prajapati, Manu Maharaj. So they are all, who helped Brahmaji on the second creation. All these Prajapatis were there, all the demigods were also there. And Naradji, Upabrahana, he went there with all his girlfriends. And there the objective was to glorify Supreme Personality of Godhead. But Naradji started glorifying demigods. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada says he started singing movie songs. So he started glorifying those demigods. And as he was glorifying those demigods, he was intoxicated. He was intoxicated by his nice body. Like I said earlier on, Shripad Adi Shankaracharya says, if you got a nice body, tatakim, shariram surupam navinam kalatram. Yeah, he was in that position. He was handsome and he has all these beautiful, companions. So he started glorifying demigods, and all the Prajapatis were there, and they got very disturbed. They said, we should be glorifying the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We have assembled here to glorify Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he is glorifying these demigods. He is intoxicated. He got intoxicated by his body and his companions. So then those Prajapatis cursed him. They cursed him that you are behaving like a Shudra. May you become a Shudra in your next life. See, so Naradji, he became a Shudra in his next life. And then from Shudra, now he's narrating to Vyasadeji about him becoming Naradji in this lifetime. So the point that I was making, Prabhuji Mataji, in that assembly now, let's go to that assembly on the bank of Ganges where Shukdev Goswami is speaking Srimad-Bhagavatam, Parikshit Maharaj and everyone else. In that assembly, Naradji is also sitting. In that assembly, Vyasadeji is also sitting. In that assembly, Vasishji is there, Vishwamitraji is there. Now in that assembly, Shukdev Goswami ji is speaking Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam to Parikshit Maharaj, and he is describing this pastime of Naradji when he was a Gandharva. See, so he is sitting there, and Naradji is not saying, hey, please edit this, edit this. What are you talking? What are you talking? My reputation will be spoiled. No. So that is the beauty. That is the key point. We learn from them. But at the same time, very important, we don't demean their position. Let's not demean their position. Naradji is sharing this pastime. He himself is speaking to Yudhishthira Maharaj, and now in the assembly, Shukdev Goswami is narrating to Parikshit Maharaj, and then Sut Goswami is speaking to Shaunaka Adi Rishi. And Naradji is sitting there and listening. In this Srimad-Bhagavatam, Vyasadeji has been chastised by Naradji. Jugupsitam, Vyatikram. And in the same assembly, now Parikshit Maharaj is hearing Srimad-Bhagavatam, Shukdev Goswami is speaking, and Vyasadeji is also sitting there. So his chastisement is being spoken by his son. But the point is, all of this is, Prabhuji Mataji, to ultimately glorify Supreme Personality of God. Please get that point. If everything, all the activities, if Harer Angri Padmam Manaschana Lagna, all of these are being discussed to glorify Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because Krishna is the only Supreme Personality. He is the only one. He is the only one to be glorified. So that is the whole point. So very important, very subtle, but please understand, we don't demean. Now tomorrow we don't go about saying, hey Naradji, what, why, you were that in your previous life. You were Gandharva when you were misbehaving. Even there is a very nice pastime in Ramayana also. You know how Lord Ram had to take birth as a human being. One of the reasons is that because Naradji cursed Lord Ram. That's a long pastime. Maybe we discuss at Ram Navami time. But the point that I'm making is, let's not demean their position. As a disciple, you ask question, and your guru will share his personal lifetime with you to teach you something. But ultimately, this is a Krishna pastime. This is not a Narad pastime, or this is not a Vyas pastime. This is a Krishna pastime, because it leads to the glorification of Supreme Personality of God. Yeah. If you want to come to your level, let's take your example. If you are saying, I've taken booster and I've survived COVID, I haven't got COVID. Do you think this is your pastime? No, this is Krishna pastime. Yeah. You because of mercy of Krishna, you got that, right? Or you are survived because of that. You are not surviving because you got the medicine. You still take medicine, you still do that, but it is Krishna pastime. Let's look at it that way. And when we start looking at that way, then there is no way, like you see in the center picture, Naradji can get darshan of Supreme Personality of God in his heart. Similarly, you can also get darshan of Supreme Personality of God in your heart, if you think it is a Krishna pastime. But if you think it is your pastime, then you are gone. Parikshit Maharaj, when he is asking question from Shukdev, he very nicely says, Shranvata Shraddhaya Nityam Granantascha Svacheshtita Kalena na ati dirghena Bhagwan Vashte Hridi. Yeah? If we hear with full faith, Shraddhaya Nityam, without any break, yeah, Granantascha Svacheshtitam, and if we apply in our life, now what you are hearing this pastime, you are hearing with some faith. And if you're going to apply this pastime in your life, Granantaschi Swacheshtitam, by making some endeavor yourself, Swacheshta, you are hankering for that. You hanker to apply. How you hanker for food, how you hanker for money, how we hanker for sense gratification. Similarly, if you hanker for Krishna, by hearing this pastime with full Shraddha, with full faith, then what happens? Kalena na ati dirghena. Without any no time, in a very short time, Bhagwan Vishate Hridi, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, will appear in your heart without any delay. Yeah. So Naradji is telling Vyasadeji that he was worried, but Supreme Personality of God had told him that don't worry, Narad. Yeah, you will have this remembrance, even annihilation or creation time. This will stay with you forever. Samritashtri mad anugraha. Very, very important. Remember that. Krishna is saying, by my anugraha, by my mercy. Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivisto matta smritim jnanam apo. Bhagavad Gita 15.15. Lord Krishna is saying, matta smriti, from me the remembrance come. Yeah, from me the forgetfulness comes. If I'm able to recite this shloka, it is only because of mercy of Krishna. If we are forgetting something, it is because of Krishna, right? So let's bring Krishna in the center, Prabhuji Mataji, and then everything will be fixed. Yeah. So Naradji is continuing, and then what happened? Then Supreme Personality of Godhead said that, and then that sound, that voice stopped. As Naradji heard that, then he bowed down. He bowed down on the ground from the direction where the sound was coming. See, so to that extent, he was already enlightened. Yeah, he knew that is an etiquette. If normally we say, if we see something, you only bow down. But from wherever the sound was coming, he bowed down and he paid his obeisance. And then from that time on, Naradji, that young child, then he just went around and singing the glories of the Supreme Personality of God. So now he's telling. Other question was, how did you pass your time? So now Naraji is telling Vyasadeji, Namani Ananta Sahata Traya Pathan. Yeah, Namani Ananta Sahata Traya Pathan. Yeah, so that Nam Anant, Anant Nam of that Supreme Personality of God is. Yeah, Pathan, by reciting. What happened? Hatatraya. Yeah, I got free from all the material hankerings. He was already free. Yeah, yeah, but he's saying, I got free by remembering, by hearing those names. And then he says those names are, how are the what is the quality of those names? He says, Guyani Bhadrani Kritani Cha Smaran. Guyani Bhadrani Kritani Cha Smaran. So those names or those pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he's saying they are guhya, they are very secret, they are very bhadrani, they are very auspicious. Kritani, those actions, and smaran. He was remembering those pastimes, and those pastimes by hearing, remembering, which are very auspicious. Hatatraya, all the three tap, Adi Devik, Adi Bhautik, Adhyatmik, or all the materialistic, taps, all the hankerings, they had vanished for Naradji. And then he said, Gampar yatam stoshtamana gata spriha. Gampar yatam stoshtamana gata spriha. Yeah. So he says, Gam paryantas. Then he was roaming around. Gam means earth. Then he was roaming all over the earth. Yeah. He was roaming all around the earth, and then Tushtamana, he was satisfied in his heart. Gataspriha, all the desires, all the hankerings had gone away. Yeah. And then what he says, Kalam Pratikshan Vimado Vimatsara. Then he was waiting for his time to be over, or waiting for this body to waiting to leave that body. Yeah. And then he Vimado Vimatsara, very important 2 points, Prabhuji Mataji. Vimado, mad means pride. He did not have any pride. Even though he had got darshan of Supreme Personality of Godhead, there was no pride in his actions or activities. He was simply going around and chanting and glorifying the Supreme Personality of God. Vimatsara, he was not envious also. There was no envy. And Prabhuji Mataji, very important, we see envy at every step. And so unfortunate, even in the devotional service, people get envious of each other. There is no dearth of services. When you see somebody progressing, people start getting envious and jealous. Why is he progressing? Well, there is nobody stopping you from performing the service. There is no one stopping you from chanting the holy names. The ground is all clear for everyone. There is no one stopping you from going to temple. There is no one stopping you from cooking bhoga for the Supreme Lord. There is no one stopping you from making dresses for your deities. I know a few devotees, they are so nicely, so beautifully, they are making dresses for their for their deities. What is the problem? You serve, I serve, everyone serve. There is no competition. So this is what Naradji did after his initiation. Very important to remember. It is not as if you wait for initiation to stop this, but he's leading an exemplary life. Namanyananta sahata truya patham guhyani bhadrani kritani chasmaran gampar yatanstu stamana gata spriha kalam pratikshan vimado vimatsara. No pride, no envious. He's just going around glorifying Supreme. So very important, Prabhuji Mataji. We should all do that, and we can all do that. And as Naradji was doing that, now he tells Vyasadeji that by doing this, yeah, evam matir Krishne, yeah, evam matir Krishne Brahman. O Brahman, O Vyasadeji, by doing this, my intelligence was fully engaged in the Supreme Personality of God, Shri Krishna. Yeah. Evam matir Krishna Brahman. Oh Brahman, like this, my mentality, I was fully engaged in the consciousness. I became fully Krishna consciousness. And then he says, Anasaktasya amala atmana. Anasaktasya, there is no asakti, there is no attachment. Amal atmana, his atma, his heart got purified. Mal means bad thing, and amal means without any bad thing. So there was no bad thing in his heart. Everything became purified. Evam Krishna mate Brahman anasaktasya amal atmana kala. Yeah, kala pradhur abhut kale. Yeah. So he says, I became very clean. I was fully engaged into Krishna. My consciousness became fully Krishna consciousness. And then he says, the time came, that the time came, which is the Kal. Kal is also another name for death. Yeah, that time came. And when that time came, then he says, Tadit Soda Mani Yatha. Like a lightning, how the lightning happens. When somebody is leaving their body, it's just like this. You don't even know that has happened. So Naradji is saying, that's what happened. The time came, his body became fully Krishna consciousness. There was no attachment, fully cleansed. And then that time came. And when that time came, like a lightning, yeah, Tadit Sauda Maniyatha. Tadit means that lightning you see in the clouds. Yeah, so it is translated, when the lightning happens, there is a sound and there is brightness also. So that lightning happened, and with that lightning, there is illumination. Yeah, illumination, and then like just that momentary thing. And Naradji says he left his body. Yeah, he left his body, and now he got a very transcendental body. He got a transcendental body as Lord Krishna had promised him, and with that transcendental body, he could roam around. He could go to any planetary system. He was Gam Parentams. He was still on earth in that body, Prabhuji Mataji, that Vyasadeji asked. And he's saying he was still roaming around on the earth, singing the glories of the Lord. And that time came, he left his body. So see, another example that this is how we should honor the death. Now, sometimes we see people are trying to, prolong their life. Doesn't mean we unnecessarily, stop caring. But very important, I was listening to my Guru Maharaj, and he made a very, very nice realization. So Maharaj was saying that death is also one of the rule of Supreme Personality of Godhead. If you are trying to avoid the death, then what does it mean? You're disobeying, isn't it? Like Hiranyaksha, Hiranyakashipu, Ravan, they asked for all these boons. For what reason? Just to live Ajar. They wanted to become Ajar Amar. Amar as in Amar. Mar means die. So they don't want to die. But are they not disobeying the laws of the nature? And who makes the laws of the nature? Supreme Personality of Godhead. Bhagavan Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Maya Adhyakshena Prakriti Suyate Sacharacha. This Prakriti, this nature works under my supervision. Everything, Chara and Achara. So yeah, so that's also wrong. If people are, planning, spending time, how to become Amar. But here you see, so Naradji, after initiation, he performed the duties. He did what he was instructed by those Vedantis. And because of their association, he was able to get darshan of Supreme Personality of Godhead. He was able to hear the sound, and then he went around with full Krishna consciousness. Yeah. Evam Krishna Matir. Matir Krishna. Yeah. So we are all trying to be Krishna consciousness. That is why I'm stressing on this point. You know, how he behaved in a Krishna consciousness. And actually in the shlok itself, it is said that Evam Matir Krishna, Krishna consciousness. So ISKCON is not a badge, Prabhuji. It is Society for Krishna Consciousness. It is an arrangement where people can come together and become Krishna consciousness. That is as simple as that. Let's not get into the hierarchy and this and that. How we can become Krishna consciousness. I shared a nice post today in our group, and it is from Prabhupada Leelamrit. Prabhupada has very clearly said the purpose of the temple. What is the purpose of the temple? The purpose of the temple is to teach and spread the glories of Supreme Personality of Godhead. Spiritual science understand that. There is no other purpose. Yeah. So that is the whole point. So this is how Naradji, he lived his previous life. And when the time came, he left his body. So there is no regret about leaving that body. This is a natural process ordained. But what really matters is, as long as we live, how we live our life. Is it purely Krishna consciousness? Are we really, observing those regulations? Are we really, following the guidelines, following the instructions by Supreme Personality of Godhead? And mind you, there is a, how we say demons and demigods. Yeah. So the only difference between demons and demigods is because demigods obey and demons disobey. Yeah. Demigods, they do make mistake, but even after they have made a mistake, they admit their mistake, but they always obey. In Prahlad Maharaj past, when Indra was kidnapping Mother Kayadu, Indra was thinking Hiranyakashipu is so strong, his son will be super strong. So he kidnapped Mother Kayadu. Think of it, who was pregnant at the time. But as he was kidnapping Mother Kayadu, then Naradji stopped him. Naradji met him. Naradji told him, "What are you doing, Indra?" And Indra told him that I'm worried that his son will be so powerful. What will we do? And then Naradji told him, no, his son is going to be a great devotee of the Lord. Please leave them. And Indra listened to the instruction of Naradji and he left. Did he question? Did he say, prove to me? Now only we know by studying Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam in 7th canto that Prahlad Maharaj is going to be a great devotee. But how did Indra know that he is going to be a great devotee? He could have questioned. He's not even born and you saying he will be a great devotee. But he listened. That's where Shraddha comes from. Shranvata Shraddhaya Nityam. So that faith was there in the Vani of Naradji, in the Vani of Shastras. So that faith is very important. So Naradji left his body, and after leaving his body, he got a transcendental body, and he had the transcendental body. Now he's continuing to describe to Vyasadeji. He got the transcendental body, and with that body, he could roam around anywhere. And then he says, then a time came when the kalp was about to end, when the full annihilation was about to happen. Brahmaji's night was about to come. And then Naradji says, as Brahmaji's night came, then Brahmaji, along with all the living entities, entered into the Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. All of them, along with Brahmaji. And Naradji says, with Brahmaji, I also entered into the body of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. And when Brahmaji's day came after the night, another kalp came. Then Brahmaji started the creation. And during that secondary creation, then Naradji says, when Brahmaji was creating, as his mind-born sons, Marich Rishi, Pulast Rishi, Pulah Rishi, then Naradji says, then I was also born as Naradji, what you see me now. In the 3rd canto, we will read this. 3rd canto, 12th chapter, it is described how Brahmaji, when he's doing secondary creation, so Brahmaji first created Sanat Kumars and he asked them to, increase the population. They refused. And then Rudra, Bhagavan Shiv came from the anger of Brahmaji. But then, as you know, how Lord Shiva was creating, so he had to stop him from creating. And then Brahmaji had 10 mind-born sons. So he's saying, Marich Atraya Angiraso Pulah Pulastah Kratu Bhrigu Vasishto Dakshascha Naradas Tatra Dashamas Tatra Narada. Yeah. Marich Atraya Angiraso Pulah Pulastah Kratu Bhrigu Vasishto Dakshascha Dashmastatra Narada. So the 10 mind-born sons are described. Marich Rishi, Atri Rishi, Angira Rishi, Pulah Rishi, Pulast Rishi, Kratu Rishi, Bhrigu Rishi, Vasisht Rishi, Daksh Prajapati, and then Narada, Dashmas Tatra Narada, the 10th son was Narada. So they are mind-born son of Brahmaji. So now Naradji is saying, when they were born, along with them, I also appeared, and I'm now here in front of you. So this is me. Yeah. And then Naradji says, in this lifetime, in that lifetime, he had to translate, but in this lifetime, he's saying, because the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he's saying he's blessed me. Now he can travel in all the 3 planetary systems, and he can also go to various Vaikuntha planets. And as we discuss in the 2nd chapter of 1st canto, Naradji is an incarnation of Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's the 3rd incarnation I mentioned last time. So Naradji is saying, in this lifetime, Vyasaji, I can travel anywhere. I can go to all the planetary systems, but his only purpose is, he is not saying from like we go from India to Australia to India, India to Europe for holidaying, for etc. He is not holidaying. He is not using those vibhutis, those siddhis, as I mentioned in the 5th chapter. Yeah, Naradji is saying he got that opulence, he got the gyan, he got the opulence, and he also got the bhakti. So that opulence is all these siddhis. With the siddhi, you can appear, disappear, you can small, you can become big. But Naradji is using all of that, Prabhuji Mataji, for what? To glorify Supreme Lord, to spread the glories of Supreme Personality of Godhead. Another big lesson for all of us. Whatever opulence you have, whatever siddhi you have, whatever capacity you have, in that capacity, we should be utilizing that to spread the glories of Supreme Lord, to spread the message of Supreme Lord to as many living entities as we can. So Naradji now says that, now Vyasaji, with this, in this lifetime, now he's coming to this lifetime. So he's in this lifetime, I've got this body. And he says, this veena that you see, that instrument that Naradji is playing. So Naradji is saying, even that veena I got from Supreme Lord. So he says, pragayate swa viryani, tirth pada priyashrava. Pragayata, I sing, I glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Swaviryani. Swar is also mean his glories, Swaviryani, and also he's saying he's using the swar. He's using those, various, 7 swar, 7 for Sangeet, what is it called? So, or the sound which is generated from this veena. So by that, he's glorifying the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is Tirth Pad, from whose lotus feet all the pilgrimages, all the places of pilgrimage originate from that feet, from those feet. Tirth Pad, yeah, Priyashrava, whose hearing, whose glories are very sweet to the heart, are very sweet to the heart also. And then he's saying, by doing that, ahut me, yeah, ahut me iva shigram darshanam yati chetasi. And he says, Vyasadeji, very important, please focus on this point, Prabhuji Mataji. So what he's saying is that I sing the glories of that Supreme Lord, and by doing that, ahut me iva shigram, as if I'm inviting the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then what happens is darshanam yati chetasi. Straight away I get the darshan of Supreme Personality of Godhead in my heart. Every time. As he's glorifying the Supreme Lord, and he get the darshan of Shigram darshanam yati chetasi. I get the darshan of that Supreme Lord Vyasadeji in my heart straight away. Now he's so potent. Yeah. Just by serving those Vedantis, so this is something we can take away. By serving those Vedantis, he is now so happy, so fortunate. The moment he sings, the Supreme Lord appears in his heart straight away. Anytime. He can get the darshan of Supreme Lord 24/7. The moment he sings, he sees Krishna in his heart. That form straight away. And then he concludes by giving that advice to all of us. He says, etad hi atur chittana matra sparashe chaya muhu. Yeah. Bhav sindhu palavo drishto harir charya anuvardhana. So he says, Vyasadevji, now I am telling you from my experience. that etad hi atur chittana, that all the living entities whose heart, atur, who are very anxious, to enjoy matra sparshechaya. Matra means senses, and sparsha is the object of the senses. So object, tongue is a sense, and the object of the tongue could be nice rasgulla, could be nice prasadam, or it could be something else. Or you want to speak some bad words, or you want to use the tongue to speak some glorification of the Supreme Lord. So he says these living entities, Vyasadevji, their heart is so anxious that they cannot control. Muhu, again and again, ichchaya, they have the desires to enjoy these objects of the senses again and again, and they cannot control their senses. So he says, from my experience, drashto, as in from my experience, bhava sindhu palavo. Palavo means boat. So these harinam, this glorification, haricharya anuvarnanam, the repetition of the glorious pastime of the Supreme Lord is the boat, and by riding on that boat, they can bhav sindhu, they can cross over this ocean of nescience. Vyasadevji, and I'm speaking this from my experience. And isn't it? I've shared with you Naraji's pastimes as Upbrahan, when he was a Gandhar, then he became a Dasi Putra, and now he can see the Supreme Lord anytime. He can see him anytime. And then he finally concludes, he speaks of his, now this is the Siddhant, this is the conclusion. So he says that these various, yam adibhir yoga pathai, that I discussed in the beginning. So yam adibhir yoga pathai kam lobha hato mukund sevaya yatvad tathatma adhana shamyati. Yeah, so he says, now this is one aspect. Yeah, by singing the glories, he can see Krishna anytime. But on the other hand, he says, all the other yoga pathai, all the other yoga path, Hat Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, and all the so-called yogas, everything except Bhakti Yoga, right? So he says, all those path, all those marks, all those routes, na shamyati, right? Muhu, again and again you try, but it will not stop. It will not stop our calm lobh. We are trying to kill, suppress calm and lobh, by using these various yog mark. Naradji says that will not work. Then what will work? Mukund sevaya, by serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is also called Mukund. So one of the name for Krishna is Mukund, and Mukund means Muktim Dadati iti Mukunda. Yeah. So Naradji is saying, by singing the glories of Mukund, that Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vyasadevji, that is the only way. But all these yoga systems except Bhakti Yoga, if you try to suppress calm and lobh, because that is the root cause for everything. Yeah, Bhagavan Kapil Dev, when he tells Mata Devahuti is asking, my dear Lord, please tell me the Sankhya Yoga, please tell me the Bhakti Yoga. Then two things Bhagavan Kapil Dev says, Aham mamabhimanotthai kamalobhadibhirmalai vitah yadamana shuddham adukham asukham samam. So he says, Aham mamabhimanotthai, me and mine. Yeah, calm lobh. By freeing yourself from calm and lobh, me and my propensities, vitah yadam manashuddham. If our heart is purified, by cleansed, if we get rid of all of these, then adukham asukham samam. Adukham means sukh. Adukh, dukh means misery, and a means no dukh. No dukh means happiness, and asukham means no happiness means misery. So Bhagavan Kapil Dev says we become same. But to become same, we have to get rid of calm and lobh. And to get rid of calm and lobh, Naradji is saying how to get rid of calm and lobh is just by Harir Charya Anuvarna. Yeah. So now Naradji concludes his lifetime, his previous life, and then he is about to stop, and then he tells, he just concludes in this verse. So this is 36th verse. He says, O Vyasadev, you are freed from all sins. Thus I have explained my birth and activities for self-realization. As you asked, all this will be conducive for your personal satisfaction also. So please go and describe the glory of Supreme Personality of Godhead. So see, Prabhuji Mataji, this is how a disciple discusses with his spiritual master. And this is how a spiritual master shares his own personal experience. And like I cautioned you in the beginning, that let's please be careful. Let's, if you hear all of this, I mean, Ram and Lakshman, they asked Vishwamitra about his, and Vishwamitra, how he got entangled when he was performing austerity, and then Menaka came. Yeah, but they, I mean, their position is or the respect, we should be very careful. That's the point I'm trying to share with you. Sometimes Guru shares those pastimes if he sees that is the benefit for the disciple, so we should hear that, but their position, we should not demean their position. Yeah. So now Naradji tells Vyasadeji, oh Vyasadeji, please go and write Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. So this concludes, Prabhuji Mataji, answer to the question by Shaunaka Rishi to Sut Goswami, and their question was, Kasmin yuge parvratteyam sthane vakena hetuna kutay sanchoditah Krishna kritvan samhitamni. That why did Vyasadevji write Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, on whose instigation, on whose inspiration, on whose guidance he wrote Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. So that this completes, Prabhuji Mataji, answer to that question now, that primary question. And now in the next chapter, we will be discussing the other question that they had asked about. If you remember, that why did Shukdev Goswami had to study Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, and how Shukdev Goswami met Parikshit Maharaj. So like I said, the summary of this first canto is, then there are 6 questions by the first 3 chapters talk about the 6 questions by Shaunaka Rishi to Sut Goswami, and then they ask further questions, and then there are 3 main questions. Why did Vyasadevji write Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam? Why Shukdev Goswami had to read Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, and why Parikshit Maharaj heard Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, right? So about the compiler, about the reciter, and about the listener. And through this process, all of us get enlightened. Everyone, yeah. Vasudev Katha Prashna Purushans Trin Punatihi. Yeah. Prichakam Vaktaram Shrotrimsta. Yeah. So he says Vasudev Katha Prashna. Any question related to Bhagwan Vasudev, it purifies 3 people. Yeah. Vaktaram, Prichakam, Shrotrims. Vaktaram, speaker. Prichakam is who asks the question, and third is whoever hears the response to that question, or whoever hears the question and answer both. Yeah, all 3 get purified. Yeah, Tat Padam Salilam Yatha. So the analogy given is how Mother Ganges is coming from the topmost planet, and as she comes down, she purifies all the 3 planetary systems. So similarly, that is the propensity, or that is the potency. Sorry, that is a potency of katha, or a question related to Bhagwan Vasudeva. So now we'll conclude today's session. And Prabhuji Mataji, if you have any questions, how are we doing? Oh, we are almost 7:30 now. So please, if you have any questions.